What's up, college football fans and Mean Green fans? Sonoy Valenta here once again with the Mean Green Show, and today I am joined with the one and only Matthew Brune. If you're not already subscribed to the Mean Green 24/7, be sure to check that out. Matthew Brune runs that page, and he does a tremendous job. Also, find him on Twitter. His Twitter handle is right there by his name, as well as Apple Podcasts. He does the Brune breakdown predominantly for UNT sports, and he does just a tremendous job. Him and his soon-to-be Twitch legend, Colin Mitchell. So, yeah, I mean, guys, they're always on top of their game after a UNT football game, basketball game, recruiting news, really just best in the business. And he is getting poached by other schools, Wake Forest, trying to get stolen from us. So we need to cherish him while we have him. So anyway, after all that, yes, sir. That. Matt, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. Just another day, just continue work. We talked about doing this a while ago, and I brought up, April, May, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I was back in February. You're a busy man.
So we had this scheduled out, and I'm glad it worked out. Now that I'm back from that little Wake Forest hiatus, and so I can get back onto the Mean Green side of things and get going here.
Absolutely. Don't ever forget where you come from, Matt.
Of course.
So, man, really, man, how is post, the big dance and the beating of Purdue and spring football? How is post UNT sports life? I mean, the major sports, I guess, for you right now. Is this some time where you get to kind of like, okay, exhale a little bit, or is it still, behind the scenes, you're just as busy as ever? What's this season like for you?
It has been a little bit of an exhale, honestly, because I think, as we all know, with the dead period of recruiting ending in June 1st, there's that kind of gap where a lot of teams are kind of waiting for that to open up, and then you hit camps, and then you hit visits, and that's where you can really start picking up, especially for a 24/7 site where recruiting is a big part of what we do. So staying in contact with them. The basketball recruiting is going. We expect that to be picking up here very soon, so that'll give us a lot. But yeah, there definitely is a little bit of a gap. These are the 2 months where you kind of have to find what you're looking for, because you can't preview next season. You want to wait for the preview of next season. You don't want to give out all your content in May and June, because then you don't have anything for July and August. So you're kind of waiting for like recruiting to really pop, but recruiting is mostly already gone, or it's waiting. And so it is a weird period of time where we're trying to, balance it out. And that's why we're trying to keep it fun with Q&As like we did the other day. And then I did a video episode looking back at the 2017 Army versus North Texas game. That was a lot of fun on our YouTube. So just kind of fun content like that is where we're trying to fill this these 2 months with, pretty much.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll get some, and we'll get into that later, but hopefully we'll get some more transfer portal news or something that we can all be happy to hear about and keep you a little bit more busy. Well, cool, man. So, really, I'd like to know, what is your own story? I mean, you cover a lot of people, and, we're about to cover a lot of people on this show as well, but I would like to hear a little bit more about your personal, what brought you to UNT? You're from San Antonio originally, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
So, yeah. So what initially, why did you come to UNT?
It was, so coming out of high school at UNT, coming out of high school, I went to MacArthur High School here in San Antonio, on like the northeast side. And I always knew I wanted to get into sports writing and journalism side of things. So I wrote for the school paper the last 2 years I was in high school. And so coming out, I was looking at a bunch of different schools, but I knew I wanted to get like away from San Antonio. But then I didn't want to get like too far away from San Antonio, So it's like that line where you're like, all right, I want to be far, but I don't want to be like unreachable to my family or whatever. Right. So I was looking around. I wanted to go like a little bit farther than Austin area. So I was looking like Dallas and Houston areas and stuff like that. So honestly, I hadn't heard of North Texas before my senior year of high school. Like before that. And I mean, I watched college football and college basketball, obviously, but I didn't. There were a lot of G5 schools I hadn't heard of at that point. Like you could probably go through half Conference USA, I hadn't heard of them. But regardless, and so then I was looking around for journalism schools that, going through all the sites of like best top journalism schools, all this stuff. And my final two were North Texas and Sam Houston State.
Wow.
And so I visited both of them, and Sam Houston State was kind of like, obviously, the way I look at it, Sam Houston State's basically like half of North Texas, like in every regard, like half the
Mhm.
population, half this, half that, half like their football teams at FCS, which is obviously it's a really good team, but it's just
Mhm.
different. So Sam Houston State, I went there, visited there. They were like, yeah, you can cover the football team like year one if you really want to. Like you can cover this, you can do like basically as much as you want.
Oh,
And then I
wow.
went to
You are a
Sam.
big time recruit for them.
Yeah. And so then I go to North Texas, and they're like, if you work your way up, maybe like when you're a junior or senior, you can cover the
Yeah.
football team. Like you got to work your way up because it's like obviously a lot more people.
Right.
And so then eventually I was like, all right, well, I know this is what I want to do. And so I knew I'm going to put the work in. So I was like, I'm gonna go to North Texas. It's, DFW area.
Mhm.
I love the campus, it seemed
Mhm.
like a cool place and stuff. So I'm a pretty simple guy. I don't need like all the charades and stuff to figure out where I want to go. I was just like, all right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go. So I go, and lo and behold, we covered our first football game freshman year, and then covered the team sophomore year, and kind of went from there. But yeah, that was kind of my whole story and decision to go into UNT, and it worked out.
So did you do anything for the NT Daily while you were a student?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So my freshman year, I'll never forget. I walked into that first meeting before the year even started.
Yeah.
I was nervous as hell. And so then I get there, and Reese Waddell is my sports editor.
Mhm.
He's working for the DRC right now. Great writer. And he asked if anyone could do soccer. And I played FIFA,
Yeah, yeah.
like,
Yeah, I hear ya.
and I watched. I had a lot of friends that played soccer too, so I was like, yeah, I got soccer. Like I'm at the
Yeah.
point I was always taught, you
Yeah,
raise your hand, you do it, man, just
for
do it,
sure.
go ahead and do it. And so he's like, all right, well, soccer plays Oral Roberts tonight, and I'm like, and school hasn't even started yet. Like I don't have anything set up, and so I'm like,
Oh, man.
okay. And so he gave me the stream link and the phone number to call after the game, and I'm like, okay. And so sure enough, Oral Roberts, they play them, and obviously the soccer team is really good. So they
Yeah.
won. I'm calling them. I'm shaking on the phone while I'm like, "Hey, coach." I didn't even talk to Coach Hedlund because Coach Hedlund would not talk to just anybody.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah, I'm nervous as hell just talking, and yeah, pump out a story. And ever since then, it's just soccer teams, and then went from soccer team to women's basketball, to
Yeah.
tennis. Did a little bit of softball, but that was it. But yeah, so the NCAA freshman year, sophomore year was just chaotic because then we had a much smaller staff, and I was senior sports writer, and then I covered the volleyball team winning conference that year. I covered
What year
football,
was this? What year
men's
was this?
basketball.
This is
This
your
was
sophomore year?
2017 to
Oh,
18.
wow.
So,
Okay, yeah, that's pretty good times for
yeah,
UNT. Yeah.
yeah. The women that volleyball team was amazing. I loved
Yeah.
that volleyball team.
Yeah.
And I did a little bit of soccer that year as well. So I was everywhere that sophomore year, and then I was the sports editor my sophomore year as well, the second
Mhm.
half of that. And then after that, then 24/7 kind of approached me about starting the North Texas site. And so after my sophomore year, going into my junior year is where I kind of made that transition over.
To 24/7?
Yeah, to 24/7. And that's what I've
Gotcha,
done
gotcha,
since
gotcha.
then.
That's
So this is
how many
year.
years have you been with 24/7 now?
Ooh, that's what I'm trying to think in my head.
Yeah.
The second, so 2018 football season was my first. 2019,
Okay.
2020. Yeah, this is year 4. This would be
Okay.
year 4 in the next one. So I've done three seasons.
Cool, man. So, like,
Right.
what are your aspirations with your career? What are you wanting to do with this?
I mean, there's a lot. Like I've obviously thought about this a lot, but there's a lot of different avenues where I'd be, really happy with,
Mhm.
whether that is going into like newspaper or in high school stuff, or whether that's staying doing more 24/7, whether that's recruiting or a team site. A lot of people, I mean, don't know this. I mean, I guess I'll say this now. I haven't said this
Yeah.
for a year. I
Oh,
haven't told
man, breaking
anybody, but
news.
yeah,
Yeah.
breaking news. Last summer during the pandemic, obviously 24/7, just like a lot of places, were hit with pandemic and didn't want to hire and stuff like that. But they had a couple people leave,
Right.
and so one of them was a publisher at Iowa State, and so I interviewed for that, and I made the final 2, and then
Mhm.
I didn't end up getting it. They gave it to a guy at Kansas.
Mhm.
And then Arkansas had a position open up, not as the head one, but as a secondary one,
Mhm.
with like basketball and stuff. And so I interviewed for that, made the final 3 in that, and they went with another guy as well. So that type of stuff, like publishing or being a head publisher at a school, or just finding different roles with 24/7, because there's a lot of different roles with within
Right.
CBS and 24/7 stuff like that. It's probably the next step. and that's kind of all I'm focused on right now, is just one step at a time, really. But yeah, that's
Right.
pretty much where I'm at right now.
Yeah. Cool, man. So do you enjoy the talking side of things more, like the podcast, the videos, that, or do you enjoy the writing more, kind of like behind the scenes, I guess, if you will?
Yeah, yeah. I've always been a writer, so it
Mm.
was always for me just writing, writing, writing. Like always, what I wanted to get better at. It became like I try to be as engaging as possible. So that's why you have to have podcasts. That's why you have to have videos. That's why you have to do all this
Right.
stuff, is because we're at the point where your writing can only get you so far, right? Your
Right.
your writing can only get you so many followers. Your writing can only get you so many subscriptions. If you're not engaging and you're not talking to people and you're not, doing like Q&A podcasts like that, then
Mhm.
you're not going to be able to reach as many people as you can. And I already know, North Texas, the fan base has been growing, but it's still, not at the point where you can just put something out and it's going to, gather this
Right.
mass amount of
Right.
following. You have to work for it.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I've, understood. So, I mean, at this point, I love them both. At this point,
Yeah.
I both ways. I feel like I've gotten a lot better at the podcast side of things. I've always been a good writer, but early on, if you listen to our early podcasts, I don't even know why we still have them up. They are they are rough. So but yeah, so doing stuff like that is enjoyable, and it gets a lot of people more engaged. So that's a way I look
Yeah.
at it.
Man, if you can find that link for that first soccer game, I don't know if it still exists, that you had to
Oh,
call
I
on the
haven't.
fly. Yeah, if you could, I'll put that in the description, because I'd like to hear that. I bet that is like, you know, puppy Bruni right there.
Oh yeah. I think
He-
20, because we did it
yeah,
my sophomore year. My sophomore year was the first Brunes Breakdown podcast, and
really,
that's when we did it. And we did it just covering all UNT sports, and that was
yeah.
probably halfway through my sophomore year. So that
Hmm.
was young. That was a while ago.
And coming about yourself, you were a, oh, sorry, I got some dogs over here barking.
Yeah.
You were a hooper, right? In high school, basketball was more your
Yeah.
sport.
Yeah. I
So
played basketball and tennis in high school. Both.
okay,
Yeah.
basketball and tennis. So, being that you didn't really play football, do you feel like, just being football being so big is that it is in Texas, you've always followed it so closely, or did you learn kind of on the fly when you got to UNT? Because whenever you talk about it, I mean, not that I'm a connoisseur per se, but I know the X's and O's,
Mhm.
played it,
Yeah.
whatever, for a good portion of my life, football. You sound, not only do you know what you're talking about, but like exponentially more than the average football fan. So do you feel like that's something that you just kind of always have had, like the knowledge of football, or has that grown significantly, during your stint at UNT?
It's hard because my whole life I've loved football and watched football, and
Hmm.
whether you watched it with my dad, watched it with my friends, have friends who are now coaches, so I've always talked with them about stuff like that. Had friends who obviously played
Hmm.
at a high level, so it was always talking to them and watching it, and so I knew a lot coming in. The thing that I've always been headstrong about, the thing that I've always wanted to kind of convey in everything I do is learning. So whether that's football, basketball, any sport really, even when I covered soccer, everything was trying to learn as much as possible when I do
Hmm.
interviews, right? So whenever I
Hmm.
talk to Coach Bennett right now, I'm trying to get X's and O's from him. I'm trying to
Right.
understand what he's looking for, what's valuable to him. When I talked to Coach Bowen last year, it was the same thing. It was
Yeah.
we would talk off the record,
Right.
for stretches, Coach Bowen and I, just about what players can and can't do,
Right.
where they can and can't play. And so that football knowledge was there. But like you said, without the playing experience, I've always been of the belief that, like, I can't come in and just be like, oh, that's easy because
Hmm. Sure.
this, or this is hard because this. I have to pull from other people's
Hmm.
experiences. And so
Hmm.
I have to ask Mason Fine what he
Hmm.
was looking for in this read, and
Hmm.
I'll never forget after the Rice game, um, when they had that loss in 2019, the last one to eliminate them from bowl contention,
Hmm.
and he's crying and stuff, and he was just like, yeah, Rice came out. Oh, it was on the Mike. Was it the Michael? I think it was the Michael Lawrence one where he gets chopped in half
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
and he's like, yeah, Rice came out in a cover 5. and this and that and that. And then I went back and I was like, all right, I'm looking up cover 5 because obviously cover 4, cover 3, cover 2. Like I know all the all that. Cover 5, I was like, I think I said on the podcast after, I was like, I don't know. I told Colin, I was like, I don't know what cover 5 is, but that sounds scary as hell.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't even know what a cover 5 is either.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, all right, man. But you get stuff like that where you just start pulling. You're like, okay, like this is new lingo. You have to learn this. And players always respond well whenever you use their vernacular, right? Like players and coaches, whenever you can bring up different stuff and different coverages and stuff like that, they love talking ball. So I've always loved learning, and that's one thing that I have no problem admitting when I don't know things. And I think that's some of the first things I tell coaches when I have them on the phone and when I first meet them. I'm like, I'm just trying to learn. Like whenever I ask questions, it's not because I'm doing a story. Like, I might do a story, but it's because I actually want to learn it. So that's kind of my approach.
I mean, you don't have to name drop or anything, but just as a whole, generally speaking, not even with North Texas, but I guess the other schools that you've helped out along the way, but are the coaches pretty open and like receiving to you, like, being that you are kind of a member of the media, if you will, do they enjoy talking to you, or is it more kind of like, oh my gosh, we have to, or, that like, do you feel like you're welcome, or is it kind of a mixed market on
it's very much mixed. So I did a lot of high school sports too, with the Den Record Chronicle and Dallas Morning News. Like I've done high school stuff too, and it's really interesting seeing how coaches interact with reporters, like just at every level. I mean, I think a prime example is going from Coach Reffett, the defensive coordinator, who, if you ever talked to him or heard him talk, I mean, that man did not say anything.
Yeah.
He was, I remember I interviewed him. I probably had one-on-one interview with him, both the 2 or 3 years that he was there. And it was nothing. It was pulling teeth, like at that point. And he's just, I don't want to give out too much.
Yeah.
And so like he wouldn't say anything. And so then you go, even Clint Bowen, obviously defense didn't play well last year, but Clint Bowen was amazing to talk to. Amazing to talk to. Like he really he talked well enough to where you could see the gears turning in his head. And so that would just, you find some coaches that do that, some coaches that don't. I talked to Coach Bennett, and Coach Bennett is just an old school guy with that accent, where he just talks and just goes and goes. And so you find a lot of different coaches. I would say the one thing that separates coaches is kind of their understanding of what we do, or what, like, what reporters are there for. Some of them don't see the point in it. Others kind of see it as someone who wants to learn, so that way they can give information to the audience. And that's where you really start to get somewhere, is when the coaches understand what you're trying to do. And so that's where I kind of was the whole time. I'm like, look, I'm just trying to learn. And so that way, if I can learn, then I can convey correct information, because that's the worst, is when they don't give you anything and then you convey wrong information.
Right.
And so that's where you try to get them to understand, is that I'm here to help you, to help them.
Right. Right. How is it, when you get close to, I think, listening to your past podcasts, that you and Coach Bowen were pretty tight. I mean, as far as just him talking to you, the availability he gave you. But is it kind of like, oh man, like you build a good relationship with them on a somewhat of a personal level, and you got to kind of come on and critique them, or you not critique them, but kind of just call it like you see it? Is that ever something that kind of like is difficult for you to do, or is it something, it is what it is? Because I mean, from the outside looking in, it seems like you do, I mean, a great job with keeping your heart out of it.
It's not hard. The good thing is, I think they understand it for the most part. The hard part is with players. Players don't understand it.
Yeah.
So that's where you get the line. You get, the coaches are 50-year-old men. They're like, they don't care. For the most part, they don't listen. Right. And if they do, then they know it's coming to them. Like they've been around, they've seen ESPN enough times where they know what they're talking about. Now you get the student athletes. That's where you start to see a little bit of like, oh, he's talking bad about me, I'm not going to talk to them. That hasn't really happened to me very much at all, if at all. But that's where you start to see that every now and then. It's like, oh, he's not talking about one time. Like I've seen instances where someone's written or said something bad about someone and they won't talk to them.
Right.
I will say though that most of the time when that happens, the person who either published the article or said whatever they said on the podcast or whatever didn't make much sense. And the point
Mhm.
was very loose. Like it wasn't,
Right.
if you say something and you write something that has point and that you say this, this, and this, and you're
Mhm.
like, look, I remember my sophomore year, I wrote, that's when Nate Brooks got beat on the double moves like
Mhm.
twice or 2 or 3
Mhm.
games in a row. And I was like, and I wrote how bad the secondary was. And I was just
Mhm.
writing and a boom, boom,
Mhm.
boom. And I know they all read it. And I don't remember if they said something on Twitter, but me and Nate were cool at the entire
Yeah.
season. We were cool.
Yeah.
Kyrie Muhammad,
Yeah.
I was really close with
Mhm.
the past his last 2 years. So it's kind of just you have to be good at
Mhm.
what you do when you do say it, and you
Mhm.
have to be understanding. Now the hard part is obviously sometimes we're gonna say takes that are wrong.
Mhm.
Sometimes we're gonna say takes that might even might not make a ton of sense at when you look back on them. And so that's where you get in trouble, but that comes with the business. I mean, you could look
Yeah.
at any sports radio person, broadcaster in the world and find a point where they were wrong or they didn't make sense. So you take that with a grain of salt and you move on. But
Yeah.
yeah, the coaches haven't really been too much of a problem. The players are much more interesting to
Yeah.
interact with.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Well, all right, guys. That pretty much, gives us the spark notes on Matthew Brune's, career and his journey to UNT and all that good stuff. So let's move our attention to UNT's second biggest star in Jalen Darden. So gotta ask you, man. So obviously we're all thrilled that
Mhm.
he broke our 17-year drought. So do you think? I mean, and he is special. I don't think I don't think anybody can make an argument that he's not. But obviously, we know he's special. But is it just purely that Jalen Darden is special, or is it that the Seth Luttrell? I know there's mixed feelings on him and stuff, but does he have this program as a whole going in the right direction? Where okay, with under him, we broke that 17-year drought, um, and do you think our next guy is, on the roster currently? Not that you have to name him, but do you think he's there currently, or do you think we're staring down the barrel of another, 6+ year drought?
It would shock me if the next one wasn't on the roster already. Just if nothing else, just because of how good the recruiting classes have been.
Right.
Like if you look at any rating system, the class is very good. 2019, 2020, 2021 are all very, very good classes.
Right.
And just historically speaking, those mid 3 star guys are going have a good chance of getting drafted. Like routinely, like because 1 star or 5 stars and 4 stars, yeah, they'll get recruited for them or they'll get drafted for the most part. Let's say it's like 60-70% of them get drafted. But there's a lot of 3 stars that get drafted. Like
Oh
there's a
yeah.
lot of, and there are some 2 stars and under that get drafted. But just because of how much better the talent is, there should be that understanding of okay, there's a better chance of them getting drafted going into it. Like they have to
Right.
develop still, they have to get better still, but there's not those red flags athletically for the most part. Like Mason Fine was a 2 star guy coming out of high school. Why? Because he was 5'10".
Hmm.
And he puts up the great, great career that he had, and he didn't get drafted. Why? Because he's 5'10". Like some of
Hmm.
those things, it doesn't matter how well you play in college, right? Some NFL teams, they look at your 40 time, they look at your bench press, they look at what you can do in the NFL. And I think just with the potential being so much higher of some of these guys, like the Murphy brothers and like Oscar Attaway, like
Hmm.
you look at just the potential of these guys is significantly higher than a lot of players. Like I'm not gonna say that, you know, Bryce Drummond is a higher ceiling than Mason Fine because of Mason's like mind, and he was just such a great player. But the physical attributes of Bryce Drummond are like huge. Like this is a
Right.
guy who you could see playing in the NFL one day if everything breaks right. So
Right.
I think for that reason, I do believe the next draft pick is on the roster. Going to the first part of that question though, is it because of Seth Luttrell's kind of aura or kind of what he's brought to this program? I think yes, because you have to kind of tie that in with recruiting to an
Hmm.
extent. I think those 9-win seasons really helped launch them into a productive recruiting to be productive on the recruiting trail. And so when that happens, then this team is really able to get a lot more talent. And so yeah, I give a lot of that credit to Seth Luttrell.
Yeah.
Jalen Darden wasn't even highly touted coming out of high school. So a lot of that's his system on offense, and as a result of that system, you're able to get guys like Jalen Darden to flourish, Guyton, Wilson, and then with this last recruiting class, Caleb Johnson, basically a French 4-star guy, comes over here because he sees that this team is passing for 4,000 yards a season. So
Yeah.
I definitely credit that to Seth Luttrell a little bit.
Yeah. So kind of piggybacking off kind of a similar question, but in our recent years, we've had really good, strong recruiting classes as far as Conference USA goes. I think 2020 and 2020 and 2021, we were second in conference, I believe, back-to-back years. And the year before that, we were maybe four. Yeah, we were decent. And before that, it was pretty bleak.
It was awful.
Yeah, it was not good. So do you think, and maybe it's a mixture of both, but do you think that's predominantly because of, like you were saying, Coach Luttrell's aura, the coaches he brings in here? Or do you think it could also be because North Texas has invested so much in athletics, and then we see all these Metroplex kids who, that's one of the debatably the most fertile recruiting ground in the nation, but undebatably it's one of, if not the best. So it's definitely super fertile here. Do you think these 3-star kids that, okay, well, North Texas has all these facilities and all this stuff, and they're in my backyard to an extension, as opposed to, or we could go to, Ruston or Birmingham, or Middle Tennessee, just these kind of like not so great college. I'm not saying they're not, but you know what I mean? We got to go a lot farther. Yeah. For facilities that aren't even as nice as North Texas. Do you think our recent success in recruiting is come more from Coach Luttrell and what he's brought, or is it just kind of like it's autopiloting itself from what we have to offer from facilities standpoint and geographically speaking?
Yeah. Autopilot, man, saying that it would go this well with any coach almost would, I feel like, be really tough to say. Like, I don't see that, just because of the lack of success that this program has had in the past. Like, I don't think that location can do that much for this team. Now, I will say the indoor practice facility is great. That's huge for them. And obviously Apogee is a pretty new stadium still, so that's big for them as well. But I definitely think I'm going to put a lot of credit on Seth Luttrell, Luke Wallerius, and the coaching staff. From the past two, those recruiting classes that you mentioned, it has all been just a complete overhaul in kind of what they have done before that, right? In 2017, 2018, it was just lackluster. When Luttrell first got there, it was lackluster. They weren't able to get any of the major recruits out there. They were having to find those little diamonds in the rough to try to break them out. And they did, to their credit, they did that. But it's just a lot easier whenever you're winning recruiting battles and you're winning and you're getting those talented guys that are high rated guys. And so I'm going to give the credit to Seth Luttrell and Luke Wallerius for selling North Texas, because I think while it is an easier place to sell than a lot of places, you still have to do it. And North Texas has historically done it very inconsistently. So for them to string together 3 straight really good classes has me just super impressed, because I didn't think, coming off 2020, I was like, can they do this again?
Yeah,
can they
same here.
Top 3 again? And they did. They went really, really big again. So I credit to them, and I'm really impressed with that. I'm interested to see if they can do it again for 2022.
Yeah, same. They're off to a good start with Vincent Page and Quaylon Farrer from out of Skyline, right? Dallas. Is it? No, it's Dunbar.
Dallas Skyline, I believe.
Oh, Dallas Skyline. Okay. All right. So kind of moving forward to the 21 season, I think we, I think you are under the thought of Seth Luttrell's seat is relatively warm, and whatnot. And, I guess, A, how hot do you think that seat is? And then B, I got the schedule up right now. So we got Northwestern State at SMU, UAB comes to Denton, then we go to La Tech, then we go to Missouri, then Marshall comes, then Liberty comes, then softens up a little bit with at Rice, at Southern Miss, UTEP comes here, at FIU, then we have another tough one with UTSA at the end. So do you think that Ren is kind of factoring in, okay, like he does have his toughest schedule. So let me ask you this. Let's say, and I know you and Colin talked about you think, and it's how you win, how you lose type of thing. But let me ask you, 4-8, and we have another top 2 recruiting class in the conference. We're sitting at 2. You think we stick with?
I think he's
And
gone.
you think he's gone pre-signing day? He's gone.
I think so, man.
Yeah.
I want to. I mean, I can obviously expand what we talked about the other day, but the C I think is very warm at this point, because I think I don't want to say this. It's tough because Latrell proved that you can win here, right? And you can recruit well here. I think that North Texas stock, like as a program, has gone up because of him. However, you're going against Louisiana Tech, UAB, and we brought up how hard the schedule is. Louisiana Tech, UAB, and Marshall are 3 conference games of that top front 6. And then you have Liberty. And North Texas beat Liberty by like 43-4 in 2017. So you're talking about 4 teams that North Texas should be on par with at this point, at least. And we're looking at all 4 of those games. North Texas will be at least probably a touchdown underdog. There is no reason for that in year 6. We're in year 6 of Seth Latrell. So I don't foresee a situation where he goes 4-8 to where it looks good enough where we're like, you know what? It was a hard schedule. Whatever. It shouldn't be that hard of a schedule because those 4 teams, North Texas should be on par with at least 2 or 3 of them.
Yes. I agree. That's a very great point. So
that's where it gets difficult for me is how many times are we going to give him this benefit of the doubt? Because next year, we don't know what the schedule is like going to be next year, but it could be just as hard. So at a certain point, you have to
FU's out there.
Yeah, at a certain point, you have to kind of figure it out because I'm looking at this schedule and there's probably only 4 or 5 games where they're going to be favored.
So do you have a schedule prediction right now? Or are you saving that, or is that something?
I have to look hard at Louisiana Tech and UAB and Marshall. Those are the 3 because if they're like you said, that's 6 straight games where it's tough for them, and I don't know if I don't know if that's going to be 6 straight losses or if they're going to pull out 2 or pull out 3. Like they need to pull out at least 2.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if they could pull out 2, that's why I think we're in the same boat. If they can pull out 2, that puts them in a much better spot than pulling out none or just 1. So out of UAB, La Tech, Marshall, and Liberty, can you give me a projection for those 4?
They're not beating Liberty. They're not beating Liberty at home. Liberty at home is going to look a lot
they
like
were ranked 13th last year, weren't they? Liberty.
Yeah, it's going to look a lot like that Houston game from 2 years ago.
Okay.
Or 2 years ago, right? I think it was. Yeah. UAB is going to be UAB, man. That's tough. Louisiana Tech and Marshall are the 2
champs.
Yeah, Louisiana Tech and Marshall. You got to hope Louisiana Tech is a little down. I haven't done my full scouting on Louisiana Tech yet, but Marshall and La Tech have to be the 2 wins. They have to be.
Yeah. It wasn't Marshall ranked like as high as or low as 18th.
They were ranked and then they lost to Rice. Yeah, they were ranked and then they lost to Rice. And
they did lose to Rice. Rice.
And then where Grant Wells threw like 5 picks inexplicably, and it was a really weird game. But those are the 2, and that's when that schedule came out, I was just laughing because I was like, all right, rubber to the road, let's go. And because even the ones you said were like kind of breaks coming off that stretch are Rice and Southern Miss.
Dude, Southern Miss might be good with Trey Lowe.
Like those 2 are not going to be bad. At all. So and then you have UTSA at the end. So that's what I'm saying. This is rubber to the road. This is it, man. You gotta win. You gotta win 6 games.
Yeah. All right, man. So let's move it a little bit over to another popular topic, though, is this quarterback situation. And we have Ani, and man, I really thought I'm not saying I don't anymore, but I thought really high of Ani prior to this season, just the flashes that we saw with, all the backups when we had Mason Fine. And, he was pretty good coming out of high school. And, TCU had him for a stint before he went off and became a millionaire. But so we got Ani, who's the guy now. Obviously, we have Jace Ruder coming in. How do you think they do this battle? Did they just jump Ruder to second? And okay, these two are going to battle it out. We know what we have outside of Ani, and no one's pushing Ani. So we need to get this guy every rep he can to try to challenge Ani, before the Northwestern State game, in which I will probably see 3 or 4 quarterbacks play. I think. So how do you think they do that? And you think it's a 2-man race? I'm obviously, from what I've heard from you, but how do you think they go about this battle?
I think you have to just throw Ani and Ruder at the top 2 at this point, because Case and Martin, you know what you have from him. Will Keeney, you know what you have from him. There's just not enough upside from those guys, I think, to put them in contention here. I think you just throw them 2 up there and you let them battle it out. I will say, I think everybody here understands that Jace Ruder has the higher ceiling. I think everyone here understands that Jace Ruder physically has a lot more potential than Austin Ani. The question is, can Jace Ruder come in and pick up the system? Can he make the throws? And can he do something that Ani can't? And I think there is room for Ruder to come in and prove himself as a better quarterback than Ani right off the bat. Because Ani, while I'm high on Ani, he completed 57% of his passes last year. There were a lot of turnovers. There were stretches where, like the start of the Middle Tennessee game, where we didn't think that he should be on the field. And so as we come off of that, if Ruder can stay healthy, we're looking at a more mobile quarterback. We're looking at a quarterback that can't do much worse accuracy-wise, because, just based on how talented he was coming out of high school, we're assuming. And if he just doesn't turn the ball over, I think that gives this team a good chance, because this team, in a lot of ways, is going to be built along the offensive line and the run game. So,
Right.
while I think it's going to be really close, and I don't know who I'm going to take for that, because I need to see Ruder a little bit more. I'm going to say that Ruder has a higher ceiling and a better chance at getting the job, but he has to pick up the system, which is not going to be easy to do since he didn't even have spring ball.
Right. And do you think we could see something like, again, kind of not including Northwestern State, where, I think a lot of them will get reps and a lot of them will probably look decent, we hope. But going into SMU, whether it's Ani or Ruder, that, okay, we're going to give them more than just a half or more than just a game. We're going to give them 2 or 3 games, and then we're going to try the next guy and give him the same 2 or 3 games. Because last year it was like quarter 1 Bean, quarter 2 Ani, and back and forth. This game, co-starting all season long. Oh my gosh, yeah. And I'd almost rather let's just pick a ship and go down with it. Already for goodness sakes. And I really do believe this Ani was the ship to go standpoint. Let's just get him all the reps. I think, not to take anything away from Bean at all. He came in and probably won us that Middle Tennessee game with his legs, and he did a lot of good things for us. But I think it's just, for Jason Bean, we've got to be playing a Conference USA defense who's playing man, who's going to turn their back to him. He's going to, gouge him. Other than that, I just didn't really see he couldn't really he's not going to contend with a UAB or a La Tech. So I feel like we should have just rode Ani, just ride it, but anyway, getting a little ranty, but do you think?
No, you're good, because I agree 100%. I wrote that last year as well. There's no reason that the better throwing quarterback should not be the one that they choose for this offense specifically. Like, if you want to commit to Jason Bean and
tailor the offense, right?
Tailor the offense around him, which a lot of people agreed with at that point. If you're going to do it, and a lot of people love Jason Bean and wanted to start Jason Bean, but they were like, all right, well, let him move, let him roll out, let him read options type stuff. Like, let him do it. But to have Jason Bean running a passing offense when you have a passing quarterback on the bench doesn't make sense. So that was the whole thing from last year. And so that's why I'm hopeful this year, if Jace Ruder gives you something that Ani doesn't, because I think he's a little faster than Ani and he's a little bigger than Ani. And I think his arm is probably about the same, but if he's a little more accurate than Ani, then I think it should be Rude who gets the job. And I'm assuming that they're a lot more similar than Bean and Ani were, because those two were very, very
Yeah,
different.
definitely. Okay, so let me ask you this. I don't even know if you know the answer to this, but the new transfer rule that's going in effect, I believe, this 21 season,
Mhm.
right? The whole, you can, and I'm asking you this, so you can play 1 years, 2 years, or 3 years if you didn't graduate, and transfer without having to sit out. That's the rule, right?
Yes. Yes, yeah.
Okay.
It
Do
is
you
a
happen to?
one-time transfer rule, except for
Okay.
graduate transfers. Well, it basically got rid of the graduate transfer thing. So where if you're a graduate transfer after you've already transferred, you still have to submit an application that might get denied. But
Oh,
if you
that was the
haven't,
second part of that question.
yeah. So if you haven't if you haven't transferred yet, then you'll obviously be able to grad transfer wherever you want. But if you've already transferred, then your grad transfer, you have to submit an application on that stuff, kind of like the old days.
Okay, so so to your understanding, it's you can transfer one time whenever, no penalty, no eyebrows raised. But the second time, even if you graduate, even if you're a grad transfer, there's no guarantee you won't have to sit out a
Yes,
year.
correct.
Yeah,
That's
you have
my
to
understanding of it.
jump through some hoops. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting though. So basically, you just get essentially, if you're right, you eliminate the grad transfer, you get to transfer, you get to use that play whenever you want in your college career. Oh, well, that's interesting. So
And
how
that's
do
why it's
you?
risky. Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're
But
good. You're good.
that's why it's interesting, because you're gonna have kids early in their career that,
Hmm.
obviously don't play or whatever, and then they transfer, and then let's say a guy from Nebraska transfers to, I don't know, Sam Houston State, something like that, and they go crazy at Sam Houston State, but then they get offers and they want to play back at a level of Nebraska. Then you're
Yeah.
like, okay, well, now I don't know if I can, right? Because then you've already
Yeah.
used your one-time transfer, and I could see that with a lot of different places happening.
Yeah.
That might be a drastic one, Nebraska to Sam Houston State,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but
I get what
you
you're
get the point.
saying. Yeah. Yeah. So that is interesting. So do you think that this new rule will help? Yeah, I know the Power Five is always going to be Power Fives. I'm not saying like, oh, it's going to be so close now you can't tell the difference between Power Five and G5. I'm not
Mhm.
saying that, but do you think it will lessen the depth of these Power Fives from the standpoint of like kids going there and like okay, like they were a pretty decent 3-star guy and they had their Power Five
Mhm.
officers and then they go there. Obviously, it works for some 3-star guys. We see a lot of success stories, but statistically speaking, there's a lot of them it doesn't work out for. They ride the
Yeah.
bench for a while and they get kind of lost in the shuffle in the fold. So that kids like that will go like, okay, like kind of reality kicks in. Like this is not going to play in the next 2 or 3 here. I'm going to go down and to the G5 and hopefully be an impactful player significantly sooner. Do you think we'll see a little bit more of that? Or on the flip side of that question, do you think we could see, and I hate to name drop this, I don't want to put this in the world, but like a case like the Murphy brothers, like they come
Mhm.
to you and they all out like next
Mhm.
year, maybe, and they're like, well, do we want to try our hand at Oklahoma State? You know what I mean? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
do you, I guess those two sides make sense. I mean, what do you have to say on the matter of that?
It has to be both ways, right? I think Rico Bussey's kind of an interesting example where he went to Hawaii, which is kind of the same thing as North Texas,
Hmm.
air raid type stuff. That might have been a different situation, but
Yeah.
I think it has to be both for G5 teams to continue to progress at the way they are progressing and to continue to be competitive with these P5 schools. Is it has to be both, because you're not going to stop players from leaving. You're not going to
Hmm.
stop players from going up to the next level. Like if Jalen Guyton wanted to play a year instead of leaving, if you want to go play a year at Michigan or whatever, you're not going to
Hmm.
stop him from doing that.
Right.
Um, Now the thing is, if Michigan has a backup receiver that didn't play much, like you said, but was, let's say, an 85 coming out of high school and is from the DFW area, then you go get him.
Hmm.
Like, it has to be kind of a transaction of sorts. Like, you can't just be losing people and not getting something in return. But that it's not like a trade. Obviously, you have to work for it. So
Right.
that's where I'm at, is that the best teams are going to be the ones that understand, like, obviously you want to keep players, but you're going to be just like this year. North Texas lost like what, 15 players, something like
Mhm.
that. If you're not going and getting 8 players, let's say, a year from the transfer portal or something like that, that can help you for the next 2 years, then I think those schools are going to be significantly behind. And I mean, we've seen Texas State go all transfers, and I'm
Mhm.
interested to see how they do.
Yeah.
So it's just going to be a lot of feeling out process. These next 5 years are going to just be all like, all right, how do we work out the scholarships? All right, how do we work out our positions? How do we work out position battles? Because if somebody loses, they might leave. That's what these next 5 years are going to be about. And I know coaches hate it for the most part, and
Yeah.
um, it's gonna be chaos, because we don't even know how players in the transfer portal are going to end up doing, because a lot of them don't have homes.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah. It's
it's going
it's
to
a
be really
crazy
interesting.
time. Yeah. So, are you familiar with Jack Abraham? He's the quarterback.
Yes,
Okay, Southern Miss transferred up to Mississippi State, and I think he's in the battle for the
he
starting
could do
spot.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, he could do well, and I've gone on the record saying I didn't like the move. I mean, I like him that he's gone. He's a good quarterback that's not in the conference anymore. But from
Yeah.
my thought was like, I don't think it's going to work out well for him doing that. He might prove me wrong, but
Mhm.
I think. Do you or what do you think? Do you think we see these G5 players? Like let's say Jalen Guyton was really good. I mean, he was at Notre Dame originally anyway,
Yep.
but if he was to transfer to a Michigan or Jack Abraham, if it doesn't work out for him at Mississippi State, that players will kind of watch like, oh, well, if you go G5 to Power 5, I mean, it will work for some, but it's not really working for the masses. Do you think they'll factor that in, or do you think not really so much?
I hope. Well, this is weird. It's tough because there's so many college football players,
Yeah.
like just
Oh, yeah.
so many college football players, and so all of their situations are different, right? Some of them are getting a lot of information, let's say, from their parents. Some of them got their coaches helping them out a lot. Some of them have a sibling helping them out a lot. The situation is so different for every single one, is that it makes it interesting to me is how they all approach it. Because I think if some people saw, let's say, Jack Abraham doesn't do anything and doesn't play over there at Mississippi State, some of them will definitely be like, oh, okay, like, I don't know if I
Mhm.
want to do that. But then you go in the mind of athletes, and a lot of athletes are like, oh, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm gonna go beat that guy out. That's how
Mhm.
athletes
Yeah.
think. Athletes are
Yeah.
like, I'm just gonna go beat him out.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of it is who's around those players. A lot of it is what they're being told. And sometimes they're right. Sometimes they can go beat players out. We see it. Basketball, it's the same type of thing. Emoji Gibson goes into Oklahoma. It's a very, very risky thing, in my opinion. And it worked out about the same as it would have at North Texas. He went and
Right.
played, came off the bench for like half the year, shot pretty well, got to the tournament, which North Texas got to the tournament. Both
Yeah.
made it to the second round. It was like the same. So, good, bad, stay the same. It's as
Yeah.
long as they understand the risk involved, I don't have a problem with it, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, they're going to control their own destiny. If they work their butts off and they earn a starting job at wherever, then it will help them, but it
Mhm.
is a risk. And so that's where I'm at right now, is that I'm okay with giving them the opportunity to risk it. I just hope that they understand it. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. I wanna kinda shift our attention to a little bit, a different position, the tight end room, man. So,
Mhm.
I heard you speak on Jake Roberts after the spring game, and, yeah, I had the opportunity to
Love
go
Jake
out there
Roberts.
and yeah, I had the opportunity to see him firsthand, at the spring game as well, and, man, he looks good. Like, I was
Mhm.
like, "Whoa," like, I mean, just coming out of high school, I was kind of thinking, oh, okay, probably more of a blocking guy, come catch whatever. But he looked like he's a weapon on the receiving end. And
Mhm.
what are your thoughts on the tight end room as a whole? Jake Roberts, and I'll let you go. I'll let you speak on that. Then I'm going to bring up Varkey's Gums.
Yeah, Roberts, like you said, was a blocking tight end coming out of high school.
Yeah.
We were all like, okay. Then they got Christian Leah, and who was a
Hmm.
receiving tight end. So we are like, okay, they got a nice balance there. Um, I think one thing that opened the door for Roberts was the sets that they use. So a lot of times they'd use him at like the H back position to get him lead blocking, and then off of that they were able to run him in some routes off of that, and so that gave him some confidence in the pass game. And then he's really worked on that, and I think he is the best tight end in that room right now.
Yeah.
One thing about that tight end room though is we expected Jason Pirtle. I don't even want to say we expect him to be great, but we expected him to do more production wise than he did last year. I know going into the season he was like what, first or second team all conference preseason,
Yeah.
and I remember seeing that and I was like, I don't see it. And Jason Pirtle had a really good year in 2019, I believe it was, but that was also because Kelvin Smith was out for a lot of that season.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting tight end room, but I definitely think Jake Roberts is the guy right now in that room, just because of his versatility and just because they call him Baby Gronk.
Yeah,
and
I know. Yeah,
I see it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, I don't really feel like the numbers have shown it in recent years with UNT's offense, but do you think Seth Luttrell really has a desire to utilize that tight end position more?
I've asked Seth Luttrell this for the past 4 years.
Yeah.
And only I guess one of those years it actually came to fruition. And that was when Kelvin Smith had that really good year. I think it was 2018.
Yeah.
Other than that, I've I've been told that they want to get tight ends more involved, but you don't see it. And so I think the good way of looking at it is that they're going to be on the field.
Yeah.
Whether they catch passes, I don't know. But they're going to be on the field to block, and they'll be running some routes, and they'll be creating some stuff. I can't go out here and say Jake or whoever or the quarterback, the tight end room as a whole is going to catch 35 passes. I can't say that. So it's tough for me. I want to say if I took the coach's word for it every single year, which I have, and I've been like, oh, they're going to use the tight ends more this year. They haven't really. So it's interesting. It's tough.
Yeah. And you know, speaking on Varquise, I mean, and you've talked about in your past podcast, your most recent one of probably won't be able to crack much meaningful playing time this year, being that it's so deep in that room. But man, I don't know how much you've really paid attention to his high school film and stuff like that. And it was kind of limited. I think his season, I think his team lost a lot of games due to COVID, I think. And, you know, I know the stats might not have been the flashiest, but just watching him even in just move, like he can block, but it doesn't look like he's a blocking tight end. He looks like he could play out a receiver.
He reminds me of Jair Shorter.
Yeah, he reminds me of Jair Shorter as well. Maybe a little just more physical presence though. You know, he just he just seems like a pretty stud athlete. So do you feel like that is an inclination of they're going after those guys like him? And I have no idea. This is total speculation, but would think they're probably not whispering sweet nothings in his ears of, hey, you're going to come in here, you're going to block, 80% of the time. You know what I mean? You're going to block the end, then you're going to get the linebacker. I would think to attract a guy like him, like, hey, we're going to get you in the end zone. We're going to get you open. And, we want to utilize your skill set, not only on the, on the line at tight end, but we'll flank you out. And, but do you think, what are your thoughts? Yeah.
He's definitely versatile in that regard. One thing that easily, like, all you have to do is say this to get North Texas fans excited is you're going to have Jake Roberts and Varquise Gums at the tight end position for the next 4 or 5 years. Like, that is all you have to say to get North Texas fans excited at that point. So, while if he is going to be more of the receiving guy, I think he's going to be really versatile for them. And like you said, he is a little bit bigger than Jair Shorter. I just remember Jair Shorter because he came in as a tight end, and they flanked him out at that point, and then he just flourished. I could see Varquise doing that similar thing, but there has been talk the past few seasons about using more 2 tight ends, and I know I just said that I don't really believe them when it comes to passing it to them. I think that they actually do want to get 2 tight ends on the field but I don't think they've had the opportunity because they haven't had enough talent in that room that's ready to get on the field. I don't think you can. I don't think last year playing Jason Pirtle and Jake Roberts on the field at the same time, I don't think that would have done much for them. So, especially when you have Jalen Darden, right? And so you had to play 3 receivers for the majority of the game. So I'm looking at it as Varquise Gums could be that tight end. He could be one of the best. He could be the best tight end in the Seth Luttrell era by pretty good margin if he's able to come in and be that catching tight end, receiving tight end that we expect him to be. Him and Jake Roberts are just great players.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of excitement there. So, kind of shifting gears to the receiving room. I know you and Colin were talking about it, and I think Colin was saying he expects Deontay Simpson. Was that correct? He's wanting
he
to.
said Deontay Simpson, I believe.
Yeah,
I don't remember exactly what I said.
I think you said Lorenzo Thompson.
I love Lorenzo Thompson.
Yeah,
Everything I've heard about him.
Yeah, I wanted to get a little bit more from you on him specifically because, when I think of receiving room from last year, I know Lorenzo out of need had to go play DB, and didn't he start a handful of games at DB, like at corner,
he did.
and he did pretty well.
I think the UTSA one he started as well, and that was
So that, I think for me, like I just kind of get him out of the receiver, train of thought because he did that and whatnot, but. So we have Jair, we have Deontay, we have Travion Brown, and I still like Bryson Jackson, out of Blinn. I think there's a lot of potential there, and there's obviously others, but kind of shifting it to Lorenzo, what have you been hearing about him? What do you like about him, and what do you feel like he could bring to this offense next year to help, just help us keep the ball moving, essentially. That's my first question. And second question is, this is my optimistic mind speaking. Could you possibly foresee any improvement on our offense, being that I know we're losing Jalen Darden, but being that we're losing Jalen Darden, maybe Ani or whoever's back there isn't like, I got the ball. Where the heck is Darden? Let me just get it to him. You think maybe like, okay, I don't have Darden out there, so I got to really scan the field. Those are my two questions.
I'll start with the Lorenzo one. Lorenzo, I talked to a coach last year, and he said he might be the best receiver in the room by 2021.
Wow.
And I obviously hadn't seen him practice because obviously last year was COVID and stuff. I didn't see him at all last year in practices. His speed is great. I think his versatility is great. His short, intermediate routes are both really good, and obviously he has the speed to get by guys over the top. But I think his hands are also pretty much already on the level that they need to be at. Now, will he be filled out enough? Will he be tight enough and sharp enough to get on the field for, a large majority of snaps and make plays? I don't know. I think that's might be asking a lot of him because I don't remember how tall he is. Is he 6 foot? He's like 6 foot, something like that.
I don't know either.
But his potential is just really, really high. And I think if not this year, next year, he could lead the team in the receptions. Like next year, 2022, I think he could lead the team in receptions. So that'll be my bold take on this show is 2022, Lorenzo Thompson leads the team in receptions. I do like Bryson Jackson a lot. I like Travion Brown a lot. The hard thing with this receiver room is Deontay Simpson let me down last year. I don't know if anyone knows, but last year I had Deontay Simpson being basically taking that jump that Jalen Guyton took when he got there. I wanted him to have that Jalen Guyton year, and I really thought he was going to, and he kind of didn't, and so he wasn't able to get as much separation as I was hoping. So that's why, to lead into your second question, I'm not as optimistic because I need to see the receivers fulfill that potential that they have. I need to see Jair Shorter, actually be that guy that we talked about. Deontay Simpson break out. And I need to see who they replace Jalen Darden with, whether that's Lorenzo, whether that's Roderick Burns, whether that's Caleb Johnson. There's just a lot of questions from a receiving standpoint for me that I don't feel comfortable saying that losing Jalen Darden might open up the field a little bit. Like, yes, in theory, they're going to have to go through their progressions more, which might open up something on the third or fourth read. But, man, Jalen Darden just got them out of so many tough situations last year.
Oh, man, that was a circus. So talking about this 21 class, and do you happen to know how many scholarships are left in this 21 class?
Oh man, it was 3, 4. I'm not gonna assert anything because I'm not 100% sure, but the players leaving really messed me up because now
how does that work? So with Jacob Farrell entering the portal, does that free up another?
It has to, because he played a game. He played a game.
Yeah.
And so
So
I'm assuming he was on scholarship. So
yeah.
now he's gone. So you have the way that it works this year is you have your 85
Mm-hmm.
scholarships,
Mm-hmm.
and the super seniors don't count towards that number.
Oh, okay.
So DeAndre Torrey, Dion Noville, I believe he was a senior
Hurdle.
last year. Pirtle, go down the list of
Yeah,
guys. The
sure.
super seniors, which I think there were 6, 7 of them, Latrell said, something like that. Those guys don't count towards the 85. Now, the players that left, I don't know how that impacts it because some of them would have been super seniors. So I'm kind of confused on that as well. I'm sorry I couldn't, give you a rundown of that, but I from what I understood, after signing day, they had a few.
Okay.
They had a few, and so now after players leaving, I
Yeah.
can't say for sure.
No, nobody. I feel like nobody knows that answer. I mean, I've talked to people close to the team, like, "Hey, do you happen to know how many?" They're like, nope." Like, so, but I feel like it's probably
Like
safe to
it might be a lot. It might be like 10
might
or
be
so.
sure, yeah,
I
maybe,
don't
but
know.
I safe to say probably at least 2 or 3, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for
So,
sure.
where do you think they go with finishing up this class A, and then B? Do you think they do it all through the portal, or do you think there's any more high school kids they're trying to get, or you think it's pretty much where do you think they go with it, and what positions do you think they
I
get with
I
it?
I think they're done with high school.
Okay.
Um, I think it's all JUCO and transfer portal at this moment. I'm pretty comfortable saying they have at least 3.
Okay.
I did a story on a offensive line target for
Yeah.
VIPs,
Yeah.
and he was raving about North Texas. He said they're definitely in my top 3. So there's like one target right there that they could potentially get. So I'm gonna go offensive lineman as one for sure. Then the other 2, I hate to say it, but I think they both gotta be defensive backs. I think you gotta go
Mhm.
secondary,
Yeah.
especially with the departure of Jevin Murray, and who was the other one that left? I have a whole rubric laid out that I don't have up right now, but a couple of the young secondary guys left. And so now you're looking at a secondary that here, let me pull up.
Yeah.
I mean, you got and this is, I mean, it's good, but it's a little shallow right now.
Mhm.
Deshaun Gaddy, Keelan Crosby, Mikhail Sanders, Alex Morris, Upton Stout, Jordan Rucker, Dorian Morris, and John Davis. Oh, Quinn Whitlock, Logan Wilson, Tyree Thornton.
Mhm.
So while it sounds like a lot, that's
Yeah.
5 positions you have to fill.
Right. Right.
And then you have Robert Johnson and Harold West coming in. So
Yeah.
that's 9, 10, 13 players for 5 positions. Ideally, you'd like to go 3 deep at those.
Mhm.
Um, I would say one of them would have to be a safety and the other could be a corner, but they're fine on linebacker. Defensive line, I think, is fine at the moment. Calvin Hutchins, as a junior college player coming in, I think will help. But yeah, I'm gonna go offensive line as one, and then probably secondary as the other 2.
Yeah.
Trying to think of anything else. Bryson Jackson receiver will definitely help them there.
Yeah.
Defensive line would probably be the only other option.
Yeah. I've heard through the UNT dark web that there could be an SEC wide receiver considering it. But we'll see. So, I mean, obviously it's not all about offense, but who doesn't get excited about a wide receiver?
Oh, I know North
And
Texas fans love offense.
oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, you didn't
Uh
really have a choice, right?
yeah. Yeah, yeah. Sad but true in the past, but maybe Bennett will turn that around. So,
Yeah.
about to wrap it up here. We've been on for a while. So, okay, out of this 21 class, you can either do one if you just want to do one, or if you want to do 2, like your favorite offense, favorite defense. But who are some guys that are just like, wow, I'm really excited we got this one. Maybe you think they make a fast impact maybe as soon as next year, or maybe just even if that's not the case, but like I think this guy's going to pan out in the next 2 to 3 years to be something special. Do you have any names you want to drop in this 21 class?
I have a few. I really
Okay.
like this class a lot.
Yeah.
Out of high school, it's tough. Out of high school, I love Harold West, the safety out
Yeah.
of Arlington Lamar. I love
Hmm.
Harold West out of high school.
Did you go watch him play in person? Was he one of the ones
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
Okay.
I
Okay.
watched him play last year in person, and I saw a few clips of other games. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I saw him play once because they just missed the playoffs, I think. But regardless, he is just really, really good at the safety position.
Yeah.
My question for him is, he has to get a little bigger, and so I don't know if in the next 2 seasons if we'll see him. but I
Mhm.
think his potential is there as a safety, and I mean, I really like him. I like Gabe Blair on the offensive line a lot. Like, could just step right in for Manasseh whenever Manasseh leaves. Like,
Yeah.
that could be really, really big. Um,
Will he play center for us? Is that what he's poised?
Center, guard,
Guard?
somewhere
Yeah.
around there. I just kind of dreamed of him at center, just filling right in for
Yeah.
Manasseh,
Yeah.
because they do have a lot of guards. I
Yeah.
mean, Dane Jackson is obviously there at center as well, but I like Gabe Blair a lot. So those are two. We've already talked about Varkey's Gums. That would be another one. So those three. After that, let me go a little deeper here. Rod Brown is someone, defensive tackle, I heard a lot
Mhm.
about.
Really? What
Like,
have you been hearing about him?
um, this is some Phil Bennett talk,
Okay.
but Phil Bennett compared him to a player that he also recruited at Pitt in Aaron Donald.
Okay.
So
Well,
there you go. Yeah, there you
that's
go.
pretty good.
One of the best defensive linemen ever.
Yeah.
That's who Rod Brown has been compared to
All
by Phil
right.
Bennett. But that is a Phil Bennett guy, Rod Brown. So
Yeah.
Phil Bennett got him early on, and so I've heard a lot of good things about him. I liked that pickup a lot as well. Fadafehi Vela is another defensive tackle that I thought was really good. So those 4 or 5 I'm looking at. I think Rayvon Crum on the
Yeah.
tackle position also. That's an interesting one. So
Yeah.
there you go. I'll give you 6. I mean,
All
Caleb
right.
Johnson is
Yeah.
Caleb Johnson.
Yeah. Of course.
I need to see him in person. I really want to see him and what he can
Yeah.
do. But yeah, Caleb Johnson's a
Yeah.
beast.
Yeah. Absolutely. One last thing, man.
Go ahead.
Before we let you go, so what do you? I meant to talk about this earlier, but I'm glad I caught it before we got off. Oscar Attaway. So I mean, I don't know if it was. I have no idea if it was COVID related or if he was injured. But he missed a fair amount of games. I don't. But as far as you know, he's healthy now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, man, I mean, from the things that I saw from him, it was limited, but he just looks like I mean, he just looks like a different cut of running back. Like I mean, he just, the numbers don't reflect that because of, his lack of play, but he was a redshirt freshman last year, I believe.
Yeah.
And he just runs like a madman. What are your thoughts on Attaway, and do you think, I mean, could the offense potentially run through him in the sense of like, kind of like how the Cowboys used Zeke back in the day? I mean, could we see anything like that? What are your thoughts on Attaway?
I think Attaway leads the team in rushing this year.
Yeah.
By a pretty comfortable margin. That's not taking anything away from DeAndre Torrey. DeAndre Torrey
Right.
is a very good back, and he's going to be good.
Are they going to use him more at the H back though? Is that what do you know?
It's tough because I could see DeAndre is versatile enough.
Right.
Where
He can play receiver. He can play some slot.
He can do a
Yeah.
lot of different things. But as far as just straight running the ball, I think Oscar Attaway is going to take that responsibility. I think they both get a similar amount of snaps, but I could see Oscar Attaway really having a good year and setting himself up for years to come to where he's going to be one of the best backs in conference, you'd say, pretty comfortably. And so with this offensive line, I have high expectations for this offensive line as well. So ideally, this is a running offense that can sling the ball around when it needs to. But I have really, really high expectations for Oscar Attaway, and I think that just what he did last year alone showed everybody, like, okay, this guy can do that. He reminds me of Jeffrey Wilson a lot when he runs. He runs through people. He has good speed, and he hits the holes really, really well. So,
Yeah.
I love Oscar Attaway. I'm trying to think. He might be the best skill possession player on the team at this point.
Yeah.
I'm definitely forgetting. And Jair Shorter is up there, but yeah.
Attaway, is he bigger than Wilson was?
Yeah, I think he's a couple inches taller. I want to say
Yeah.
Attaway is 6'1".
Oh, okay. And he's pretty thick. He looks thick, man.
He's just a complete monster. And that's the running backs that they've been recruiting over the past few years. Is they got away from recruiting a little smaller backs, not to take anything away from guys like Nick Smith and DeAndre Torrey was a little smaller when they recruited him, or he is a little smaller. But I'm not size-wise. I mean, DeAndre Torrey is a massive human being.
Oh yeah.
Height-wise, he's 5'7", 5'8". But I mean, you look at the last few recruiting classes. I can never say his name. Kaika Ragsdale.
Oh yeah, Kaika Ragsdale.
Yeah, those guys. You look at just running back to the past few classes. who's the one from this last class was Keith Jackson's only 5'10", but still, I mean, he's a
Yeah.
bigger back as well. They've
Yeah.
they've been recruiting a lot of bigger backs since that 2019 class. So that's the direction they've been going. And I love Oscar Adaway's potential to really light it up this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, Matt, once again, I really appreciate your time and coming on. I know you're a busy guy, and guys, you already know the drill. If you're a fan of, college football recruiting, transfer portal, G5 football, consider hitting that like and subscribe button, because it's all we really talk about. And be sure to give Matt a follow, at his Twitter handle, which is listed there below, as well as, on the podcast, like I said earlier, and the Mean Green 24/7 page. Him and, really, he just does a great job of covering not only UNT, but other people as well. But once again, Matt, thanks. And, I look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks for having me on, man.